Hi, and welcome to Answers News for Monday, October 29th. It's my first time back in the last 2 months.
Welcome back.
It's good to be back. I'm here with Bodie Hodge and Dr. Georgia Perto.
Yep, and we decided we would match you. We all decided to wear purple
no
today.
joke. I came up on stage and I'm like, oh, okay. We've been around each other way too long, I think, now. So we're matching.
Color coordinated now.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we are following along on Facebook on the Ken Ham page, the Answers in Genesis page, and the YouTube Answers in Genesis channel. So you can tune in there. And just so you know, so in just a couple of days, Ken and another one of our speakers, David Shakin-Ryan, will be heading out to Ireland for a conference out there beginning, it's Friday and Saturday. And so it's in Athlone, which is about an hour and a half, my understanding, south of Dublin. It's in central Ireland. So you can find out more information, and we'll post a link to that on there. And so if you're from Ireland, would love to see you out there. And somebody's microphone is not on. Is it yours?
Might be me.
Is it your microphone that's not on?
Am I not? Oh,
There
I
we
did.
go.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
There we go.
Hey, welcome to Answers News. Let's do it right now. Actually, we have a live
Now you
studio
can hear
audience
it.
with us today. Let's let them hear you. There they are. Yeah, we have a group here from Jackson Hole Bible College. So let's see if you guys can be louder than the whole audience. Let's hear it.
Yep, that was
All
loud.
right.
Enthusiastic group.
So in honor of Avery being back today, of course, we had to show pictures. So I'll let you do all the talking.
So this is my daughter, Felicity. Thank you. Yeah, she's pretty cute. She's now 7 weeks old. So yeah, she's the best little baby ever. She slept through the night last night, so she's amazing.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And I love her. So many of her pictures are like, she's so serious.
She's
Like, it's
such
not
a
like a smile. It's
She's
like
such a serious baby.
baby.
She just sits there and scowls all the time. It's adorable.
Yeah.
And this is a picture with her brother.
Yeah, that's Winston, my son. He's 2, and he just thinks she's the greatest thing ever. He loves her. So
Good.
yeah, they're pretty fun.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, we have one more fluff article. Okay, not that your kids are fluff. Things we talk about before we get to the actual news articles, I guess I should say. All right.
Titanic 2 resumes construction after a financial holdup, plans to finally set sail in 2022. So if you want to go on a cruise in 2022, you can take a cruise on a replica of the Titanic. That is following the same route as the ill-fated original Titanic.
Are they even selling tickets for this? Everybody's like, you know what, we're going to go on the second voyage. You know?
Ew, yeah.
I think I'll pass on that because that's a little scary.
It says that it will boast modern navigation and safety technology, including plenty of lifeboats. So you should be good to go on
That'd
Titanic
be what I'd be
2.
going.
Yeah. Well, apparently the cost was $500 million to make that. And just as a comparison, when we built the full-size Noah's Ark, you know, with all the engineering and everything behind it, which is the largest timber frame structure in the world, that was $100 million. So, I mean, they're spending a lot.
Yeah, but we built a cargo ship. They're building a leisure.
A luxury
Oh, that's
cruise
right. They're building a
liner.
luxury cruise. That's right. And it is being built in China rather than Belfast, Northern Ireland.
the
which is
original
where the
one was
first one
built.
was. So I'm sure when it's going across the ocean, it's going to have a little sticker on it that says "Made in China."
Oh, God.
But eventually it's going to circumnavigate the globe, apparently, and stop in different ports so people can see it and
Yeah.
whatnot. So.
I mean, I'm a huge Titanic fan, actually. Not the movie, but like the actual thing. And so I think this is neat, but even I wouldn't. You know.
Yeah. On some serious news, a lot of things have been happening recently. It's just a reminder of a sin, cursed, and broken world. Many of you may have seen what's been happening or what happened in Pittsburgh at the synagogue shooting there, you know, which seemed racially charged. We've also saw one recently, you know, where a person went into a Kroger and ended up killing some people, which was
Kentucky,
also
right?
racially charged. And, you know, need we even mention, you know, people sending potential bombs and threatening powders and things like that. It's a terrible reminder we are in a sin, cursed, and broken world. So we need to be praying for this country and pray for a lot of the families of those who are involved in this.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
All right. This next one, I don't have a title on mine, so.
There's the title.
That's the title.
Oh, right there. It's really small.
It's hidden, right? It's almost like camouflage.
How do we declare creation very good in the face of climate change? So this was written by a eco-theologian, which was a new term to me. I hadn't heard that before. Eco-theologian and pastor about climate change and how can creation be very good in light of all the devastating things that are supposedly going to come about due to man-made climate change.
Now, here's the thing. We're definitely in a sin, cursed, and broken world. I mean, that occurred
Which
right there in Genesis
is a
chapter
fact
3.
she never acknowledges once in her
That's
entire
right.
article.
And yeah, the Bible does declare everything very good. And I think sometimes people misconstrue that passage and want to apply it today. Originally, creation was very good. We see that in Genesis 1:31. We expected a perfect creation from a perfect God. Deuteronomy 32:4 says every work of God is perfect. We expected a perfect creation. And at the end of the creation, God indeed declared everything very good. Now, the thing is, it's been broken since then. And that's why we're in a world where we see all this death and suffering and horrible atrocities and just terrible things. And we look forward to a time when there'll be a new heavens and a new earth, and there'll be no more curse, and all that'll be removed. And of course, the Bible talks about that in Revelation 21 and 22. But when we apply that to our current condition, boy, we run ourselves into a fallacy there.
Well, and it talks about, like, she says, well, through lifestyles, we have to have lifestyles, that care about the climate, to care for the earth and her most vulnerable creatures. Now, she's not talking about other human beings. She's talking about animals. We've really got to take care of the animals. Now, I agree we need to be good stewards, and we need to have, we were told to have dominion over and basically take care of them, but not at our expense. We are the most important creation of God. And a lot of the climate change things that they're wanting to put into place to curb climate change will actually hurt human beings for the most part, especially those that are poorer. And so that's what we should be taking into consideration.
Right. Yeah. You have to. Yeah.
I'm reminded of Genesis 8:22, where it talks about seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer. All that stuff. It's not going to cease so long as the earth endures. We need to remember that promise. Sometimes we get in this mindset of, oh, this is going to go extreme. It's going to be terrible. It's going to destroy the earth. Oh, we got to do something right now. Well, hold on a second here. The Lord did create things, and even though it is sin, cursed, and broken, it still works a lot better than people might suspect.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to be a good steward of what God has made.
That's
we need
correct.
to be conscious about our,
But see, here's a reminder too. We need to test everything and hold on to the good.
Yeah.
So whenever we hear these types of claims, go back to Scripture, compare it to Scripture, and test it against that.
Because for being a theologian, her theology in this article does not seem to be influenced by the Bible at all. It's influenced by the claims of climate change alarmists, not by what Scripture teaches about.
Right, because she talks about adapting our faith to climate change. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, no, the faith doesn't change. I mean, the climate may change, but our faith and God and who He is better not be changing. So.
Right.
Somebody wants a close-up shot of our mugs. I'm assuming they mean these mugs.
Oh, no, they're talking about my mug. See, mine even has purple, and it matches us. So.
Wow.
Yeah, his is on dragons, mine's on the human body.
Yeah, you got a little purple.
She's a writer, so.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Writer's block is a figment of your...
Yeah. All right, this next one.
Mugs.
Belly fat has a role to play in fighting infections. So... when it's talking about belly fat, it isn't talking about like, woo.
Not that kind.
It's talking about a new organ. How did you pronounce it again?
Omentum.
The omentum, which is basically like an apron of fat that covers over your intestines and stomach.
Right, and it's a very important area. It wasn't until I think it was like either last year maybe or earlier this year where they declared it to be an actual organ. And so you don't find new organs very often, but they had finally declared that it is its own organ. And what it has is it has a lot of certain types of tissue that are very important for the immune system, that help our immune system. It sort of filters a lot of the things that are going through the abdomen to catch microbes and things that might be dangerous to it, maybe even to kind of keep, it's the abdominal police, okay? So it's supposed to keep, because there are a lot in our large intestine, a lot of bacteria, and we need to keep kind of all of that in check. And so they think this may play a role in that.
My youngest daughter is 4 years old. And she came up to me yesterday and she was sticking her belly out. She's like, look, I got a big belly. And I'm like, you know what? When you're older, you're not going to want to be saying that. And she's like, well, Daddy, you got a big belly.
Children keep you humble.
She says that about you.
Children keep you humble.
I was like, well, I need to go do a little more exercise. And then I come to the news and there's an article on belly fat. I'm like,
different
is the Lord trying to tell me something?
Go do some sit-ups.
But they are saying that, when there are problems with it, when it's not working properly, then they have found it may have a role in certain types of cancer as well. So it may be leading to metastasis of certain types of cancer. So it's good that we have a new organ. Now we need to, we don't have a new organ, but we discovered a new organ. So now we need to figure out what good things it does and what can happen when it goes awry. But again, it just shows us even something as simple as like body fat. You know, you wouldn't think about that really having an important or significant role, but it truly does. A very complex role, showing that it's designed.
Our bodies are so complicated.
Yeah. Okay.
Modern humans retain DNA sequences from Neanderthals related to fighting off RNA-based viruses. So this article was looking at genes that fight off these RNA viruses that that some humans have that they believe are linked to genes from the Neanderthal population.
And not new genes. Don't think, oh, the Neanderthals had these genes and now only some humans have these genes. We all have these genes. It's just that the variations that Neanderthals have been found a lot in certain groups of humans, okay? Just those variations of them.
And see, that's not a problem. Neanderthals were human.
Yeah.
They were some of the people that actually left the Tower of Babel and spread about to different parts of the world. In fact, I put together a couple slides. If you want to slide over this, this is the typical range of where we find Neanderthals fossils and that sort of thing. And I thought, well, you know, this is interesting. You know, I look at this and I think, okay, well, let's go back to the Bible. Let's start with the Bible. We know Noah and his family came off the ark at the Tower of Babel. It gives a listing of different family groups. And we know where a lot of these family groups went to. And just to give you an idea, the box on the right side, you have Noah and his son Japheth. One of Japheth's sons was Gomer. That's not to be confused with Shazam! Golly! That's a whole different Gomer.
He's really tired. So
I love to look at the audience out here because the older people are all smiling. The younger people
all the young people are like,
I don't have a clue what you're talking about.
See, you don't get it. Yeah,
no.
See, that was not a millennial generation show. But look up Gomer Pyle and you'll find out. But you have Gomer and his descendants. That's where a lot of the Gaulish people, a lot of the say, people from France and Portugal and some of the Celtic groups came from. Well, one of his sons was Ashkenaz, which is where a lot of the Germanic peoples came from. And one of his other sons was Togarmah, where a lot of the Turks and some of those people groups came from. And it's interesting how some of these descendants of Gomer just match this beautifully. And one of the things that I thought was neat is in the article itself, it says, you know, they're finding some of these genes in modern Europeans as well as some of the people in East Asia and some of their genomes. And there is one people group that we know for sure in China, the Mao people, the Mitsao people, where they have a lineage that they claim that they are descendants of, go figure, Gomer. It's just fascinating. So, I mean, we do see some of these connections. So I get excited when I see things like this.
Tell.
And I have a whole book on it, The Tower of Babel. If people want to find out more, if you know a little bit about your ancestry, it really is a neat book.
What I thought was interesting about this article was this one line. It says, it made much more sense for modern humans to just borrow the already adapted genetic defenses from Neanderthals rather than waiting for their own adaptive mutations to develop, which would have taken much more time. So, like, they thought about this? Like, what?
Yeah. Oh, let me borrow that gene. I like that one.
What's going on inside their heads? I guess, is that Inside Out theology, if anybody's seen that movie, Inside Out?
Yeah. Well, and I thought, too, when I read this, I thought, you know, they said, well, it made sense to have these gene variants rather than waiting around for their own adaptive mutations. And I thought, yeah, that random chance mutation, you know, it's a killer, right? Because that's how evolution supposedly works. But while you're waiting around for those random mutations to occur, that's too long for anything to adapt. You die. And so that's the problem. And so rather, what we think of this as created genetic diversity or created heterozygosity. So God created organisms with, even Adam and Eve, with variation, and we see still some of those variations today that can help us fight off certain types of viruses. So that's a good thing.
All right.
All right. This next one was really cool. Meet the scientists bringing extinct species back from the dead.
You know, it figures that they would publish this right around Halloween.
But the creature they're talking the most about, the species that's extinct in this article, is passenger pigeons, so not very terrifying. But
I think we'll live.
But basically in Australia, they've taken descendants of just the common rock pigeon, and they've bred them so that they have the Cas9 gene in each of their cells, which is, let you explain that.
Cas9 CRISPR, which we talked a lot about that on the last one. It's a type of gene editing technology. And so they're basically breeding these
they're like little
pigeons.
molecular scissors.
Yeah, like molecular scissors. They're breeding them with the ability to do that so that they can go in and make changes so that the rock pigeon basically has the same gene variants or that the passenger pigeon does.
So they're basically trying to make passenger pigeons out of rock pigeons in one sense.
I'm personally very skeptical as a geneticist because even though you can change the genes and you can make them you can make them identical to what's in a passenger pigeon, that doesn't mean you have a passenger pigeon, because it's not just the genes that you have to change. You have to change all the stuff in between the genes, because that's usually involved in regulation of those genes and how those genes are expressed. It's more than just the gene. And there's all these other layers of information in DNA that we're still trying to figure out.
Right,
so
yeah.
I remain skeptical.
See, I look back in the past and I'm thinking, you know, why didn't they try to do something like this when they had the last passenger pigeon alive? You know, let it breed back with another one of its kind,
Right, yeah.
a pigeon or a dove, which they're all part and parcel of the same kind, just to preserve some of that information, preserve some of that regulatory stuff. But of course, that never happened.
Right. And this is an evolution. Now, that's one thing we need to understand, because they talked
Yeah,
about this helps direct the evolution of the species. Now, if evolution just means change, sure. But this is an evolution in the sense of molecules to man. This is just slight variation. That's why they can do this, because passenger pigeons are very similar to rock pigeons, and so that's why they can even do this in the first place.
They're part of the same created kind. They could interbreed with each other, for example, if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
Like we see interbreeding between doves and pigeons and things like that. Now, I also look at this and I think, okay, the reason this is even possible is because even though the passenger pigeons are extinct, some of their equivalent relatives are still alive.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the doves and the pigeons, they're the relatives. Same sort of thing, they're talking about mastodons and mammoths. You know, it's possible to try to manipulate, you know,
They're trying to
modern
manipulate
day
elephants, yeah,
you know, which
Asian
are part of their
elephants.
same kind. Now, I've had people say, well, you know, could they do something like this with a dinosaur? Well, we don't have any living relatives of theirs that we know of. So, you know, I don't think it would be possible.
you
Yeah,
can't
all of the
take a
dinosaur
bird.
kinds.
You can't take a bird.
No.
Sorry. Turkeysaurus isn't going to come after us.
One thing I noticed in this article, though, was they were talking about how, you know, people are saying with this gene editing technology, well, maybe we'll have designer babies and stuff, and they just touched briefly on it. But they had one sentence where they said, in the past 18 months, researchers in the US and China successfully edited disease-causing mutations in viable human embryos not intended for implant or birth. And it just struck me how casual they are about the fact that those were humans. Like, those are babies. Sure, they're embryos. They're not as developed as you know, my newborn or my toddler or myself, but they're human beings, and they just researched on them and let them die. Like, just because they weren't intended to be born and they weren't intended to implant and grow, they could do research on them and just throw them away.
Yeah, it's
sad. Just so, our culture just treats human life so casually, especially before the life is born, and it's pretty.
And we have to be careful too.
Awful.
I mean, I'm the other reason I'm not a fan of reintroducing species that have been extinct is because the environment's different now. The habitats are different, and so what happens when you reintroduce a woolly mammoth or a passenger pigeon? I don't know. I mean, how is that going to affect other species that are alive today? So there's a lot of considerations that have to go into this before we just start doing this, so to speak. We're still a long ways from it, but still something to think about. We've got people on here from China, from Ghana, let's see, what else? Buffalo, New York, so British Columbia.
That's almost Canada.
Oregon, Texas, and lots of people are glad you're back, just saying.
Oh, well, thank you. It's nice to be back.
I'm kind of not paying attention here. Okay.
Someone was asking for the name of the book Bodie mentioned. It's The Tower of Babel by Bodie Hodge. That's the name of that book. All right, this one. Bizarre 185-million-year-old Jurassic-era mammal found with 38 babies. So in a big chunk of rock, they found this creature called a cynodont, and as well as 38 partial skeletons of babies, which they think belong to this creature.
I am so glad that we as humans don't have 38 babies.
Me too.
Could you imagine
that would be a lot.
The diaper business would be explosive.
I mean, my parents have 15, but not all at once, and that, you know, that's enough.
Oh, my.
38 would be.
But a cynodont is a mammal. I mean, this is a type of mammal. We don't have these around anymore, but they did at one point. They belong to therapsids, which is a group in which modern mammals belong to. But what they're trying to do with this article is they're trying to say, oh, this is a mammal precursor, okay, that it's on its way to becoming a mammal. Because with all these babies, they're trying to say, well, we think they hatch from eggs, but we don't find any eggshells. We don't find any evidence that they hatch from eggs.
Oops.
And they don't even know for sure that all of these babies belong to that one adult. Like,
don't know.
Right.
We don't have evidence, of course, that that adult
There could have
birthed
been
all 38
multiple
babies.
parents,
So it could have been.
and there's only one of them buried right here. I mean, this is from flood sediment. Whenever you hear Jurassic or Cretaceous or Triassic, any of that, that's all part of the flood sediment. So this was basically last moments before burial.
Well,
during the flood.
they even said they hatched, even though there's no evidence of eggs, right? It says, and then they died. Well, yeah, because the flood. I mean, it happened suddenly
Right.
and buried them
Catastrophically
quickly.
buried them.
You know,
Yeah.
I looked up, you know, some other creatures that might have had big litters, and, you know, because let's just assume for a second that this really did have 38 babies. Is that possible? Tenrec has been observed to have 32 in a
And
litter.
tenrecs are mammals.
Right, and they're
Yeah.
mammals. I did look
Like a
up, you know, if you
shrew
jump
kind of
outside the mammals,
idea.
there's a tiger snake that had 126 babies. So,
That's a lot.
you know,
Yeah.
I mean.
But mammals
it is
can do
possible,
this. I
but-
mean, it's not
Right.
like it's outside the realm.
Well, there's some mammals that even lay eggs, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Echidnas and
So they're
Yeah.
trying to make it a
Platypus, I
story
guess,
out
so
of
that-
something that really isn't have anything to do with evolution or anything to do with the story of evolution.
Yeah.
It's just a finding. And again, it's your worldview that decides how you interpret that data and what you think of it. And they're trying to get it to say something that it really doesn't say at all.
That's the thing, you got to be discerning. Cool evidence, watch
Yeah.
out for the storytelling.
NASA to make huge decision in the hunt for alien life on Mars. So scientists are gathering basically to discuss where NASA should send, where they should land next when they go to Mars in 2020, I believe is when they're hoping to go. And this is happening while they're being urged to make the search for extraterrestrial life a core part of their strategy on Mars.
Right. Apparently they had 30 different sites initially back in 2014, and now they've narrowed it down to 4 candidates, and now they're going to battle out which site's it going to be. And I don't know, they should probably call Matt Damon, didn't he? See, some of you guys are laughing.
No,
They've
yeah,
heard of that one.
But they want to, you know, the thing is, that they said they're looking for traces of alien life. But here's the thing I always bring up with this is, how do you know that life on other planets is the same as life here? I mean, if everything just evolved by random chance, it wouldn't necessarily look the same as it does here. But yet, so that's what gets me is they think, well, we got to find water, we got to find, you know, these organic molecules that we find on Earth, and that means life. And I just think that's a huge, I mean, I don't think they'll ever find it. I mean, I don't think biblically that's supported at all, but I just think it's interesting how even they're not even looking according to their own evolutionary paradigm. You got to think, I would think they would need to think outside the box. You know, maybe there's silicon-based life, maybe there's other life,
Right,
you know,
yeah.
So I don't
See,
know.
as an engineer, I'd look for something different. They want to go up there and look for life. I'd go up there and look for gold, bring it back. That could fund your next trip, you know?
I think they're about
You
as
do
likely
that,
to
right?
find that as they are alien life, yeah. So.
Huge gold
Okay.
deposits discovered on Mars.
That would sell well. I could see that. Like your engagement ring comes from Mars. Like that would be cool.
Well, you know, if they could do that by 2049, they could be called the 49ers.
Oh, jeez, bad
All
puns.
right.
You
Here we
are
go.
tired.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, this next one is again about Mars. Aliens could be hiding on Mars, living in briny water under the planet's surface, a new study says. So now they know where to look for the life when they get there in 2020. Look in these briny pools.
And they already know what they look like. They are sponge-like creatures, could be lurking underneath the surface
It's
of...
SpongeBob SquarePants. We
Oh,
know
my
where he
goodness.
comes from now. So.
Yeah, we reported on that in the last
Yeah.
Answers News. They're like, yeah, you're evolved from sponges. And
Well, again, I think that goes into the
Wow.
fact that they had said we either come from, what was it, comb jellies,
Comb jellies
or
or
sponges.
sponges.
So now they've decided it's definitely sponges. So when they look for life on other planets, what are they looking for? Sponges. Same thing,
See,
same
it's
idea.
that quick. And of course, we're not descendants from sponges. We're made in the image of
No.
God.
Right.
Adam was made from the dust of the ground. Eve from a rib and from the flesh and the side of Adam. That's not too hard for an all-powerful God. But that's what they're looking for here. And they also say a simple animal. They want to call us a sponge simple. They're not simple
Not that
at all.
simple, no.
So,
They're not simple.
No.
They just think there could be a lot of oxygen stored up in these areas. And so because oxygen equals life here on Earth, obviously it equals life elsewhere
Yeah.
as well. And so that's
And
what
again,
they're
that's that
really-
assumption that life would be the same in other
Yeah.
places as it is on Earth.
So-
well, see, you know, why not turn this around and say, you know what, how would, say, bacteria or some of this sea plants or things like that or sponges, how would they do on Mars? Wouldn't it be a fascinating study to put some up there and just see what would happen?
Yeah.
See, I'd
I
be
mean-
curious at that.
I mean, bacteria here on Earth can live just about anywhere.
Yeah.
Not sponges so much, but bacteria, I mean, they like literally,
Anywhere.
there's pretty much no place that they don't live. From the Antarctic to dry areas. And so they can
Hot
live in
sea
pretty
vents.
extreme areas. The only thing is the Martian atmosphere is very different from our atmosphere. And
Yeah.
so they would be, and the temperatures even too, are nothing like they are here.
A lot of differences.
So I don't think they'd be able to make it very well.
Yeah.
It's
where they
clearly
are.
Earth was designed for life. Mars was
Right,
not.
right, not other
Yeah.
places, so. Okay, good. We got to the article I wanted to get to.
All right.
Black Death and other ancient diseases could be reawakened by climate change, Professor warns. This article.
So I've read this. It's a scare article. That's all this is. It's a scare.
It comes out by Halloween.
It's all about how if the permafrost starts to melt, then we could have all these microbes that have been dormant for so long released, and then the Black Death and other horrible plagues could decimate the human population.
Let me read it. Global warming could reawaken ancient diseases, even the Black Death.
Which is still around.
Still
yeah, like I was reading in the news a couple months ago, Madagascar has been dealing with outbreaks of the plague, the Black Death.
So
it's not like it completely
disappeared.
Just not plague status, not like lots of people dying from it. But the thing is, as I started to read this, I'm like, okay, who is saying this? All right, and so it's Professor Peter Frankopan. All right, so he even talks about this being a speculative prediction that he gave at a literary festival. All right, and he is a professor of global history. What does he know about science then? I mean, he's not a scientist in any way, shape, or form. And usually when you have scientific information, you present it at scientific meetings and you publish it in scientific journals, not literary festivals, okay? And so that was my first tip-off that, okay, there's going to be a lot of problems probably with what he's saying. And, and I think he has the idea that permafrost, because we call it permafrost, is permanently frozen, right? That's the idea. But as they have found over the years, especially the permafrost that's near the surface, it freezes and thaws all the time. If you go and try to find, like, I read this whole book on the Spanish flu, and you try to find bodies that were buried in permafrost, that ground has become permafrost, those bodies are totally deteriorated. They can't get the virus from them at all because it's just underwent too many freeze-thaw cycles. So there's just no way. The other thing is, and he seems to know that back in the 1300s, what the temperature was, okay? We don't know that. We don't have any accurate readings of temperature from the 1300s.
Especially atmospheric ones.
Global temperatures.
And then he says that affects the life cycle of the higher temperatures will affect the life cycle of the flea and the bacteria. So I went and looked for actual scientific research articles that deal with that issue. And it turns out that increased temperature either has no effect on the life cycle of the flea and the bacterium, or has an effect which makes the bacteria less infective or the flea less likely to pass it on, which is exactly the opposite of what he says in this article. So he doesn't even know. He doesn't know science.
When you're reading stuff, just pay attention, ask questions about what you're reading, because just because you read it on the internet doesn't make it true.
But what was great, though, about later in the article, they talked about other things that they're concerned about, like in the journal Nature Plants, which actually is a scientific journal. They're afraid that severe climate change would cause worldwide beer shortages. Okay, so.
Oh, well, it comes out. That's the whole motivation
behind it. That's the problem. And they even somehow link it. They say rising global temperatures could result in 40,000 more suicides. How is climate change linked to suicide and beer shortage?
I think the word is sensationalism. You got to, people take something, they want to run with it without actually properly vetting it and checking it. So.
It's crazy.
All right, this one is here for Bodie because he loves the archaeology ones. Ancient inscription discovery thrills archaeologists in Israel. So they found a 2,000-year-old stone inscription that has the first spelling of the word Jerusalem on the stone inscription, spelled the way that it's
the full spelling of it,
spelled the way that it is today,
which is kind of neat. And it's written in ancient Aramaic language. For those of you who are not familiar with Aramaic is also called West Chaldee. It's a Chaldee language. Remember, Abraham was called out of Ur of the Chaldees, and he spoke Hebrew, and of course his descendants spoke Hebrew as well. So what happened was later on, the Babylonian Empire with Nebuchadnezzar, they also spoke a Chaldee language, and they conquered everybody at that time. And that language then took over, became the common trade language. And the region of Aram, which is one of Noah's descendants, that area, they started speaking West Chaldee. That was their dialect. And so Aramaic became known as West Chaldee and vice versa. So that's actually where that language comes from. But it is fascinating that they've actually found, you know, the full spelling of it and that sort of thing. It's a great archaeological find, another confirmation of what we read in the Bible. So.
Yeah, that's the thing we need to understand is, you know, for years and years, they just thought, oh, archaeology, I should tell you some pictures here. The archaeology, you know, they weren't using the Bible as a history book to help inform where to look and what to look for. But the more and more that they do that, the more and more they find that, yes, indeed, it does support absolutely what the Bible says.
Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
All right.
Got
well,
a few more minutes.
These next two articles, the problem is we really need to do them together. We cannot separate them. So I don't want to do those. And
we don't have enough time to cover them today.
So we'll probably end just a little early today. I did have some comments on here that I was going to read. Let's see. So somebody was talking about the belly fat article. It says, now I have a good way to explain my belly fat. You know, it's not that type of belly fat, but anyways, okay.
Someone mentioned earlier when we were talking about all the horrible things, the racial violence that's going on, was talking about our Answers for Pastors conference, which next year, 2019 Answers for Pastors Conference, the theme is One Race, One Blood, helping pastors and Christian leaders and anyone who wants to come, really addressing that issue from a biblical perspective.
And our VBS too, for next year, Incredible Race, focuses on the issue of one race, you know, multiple people groups, and really being able to teach that to children. And so we in
a really fun way dealing with that issue.
And then somebody's talking about the Sponges in Space, a comedy movie.
Yeah. You know, another thing that we've got coming up here in the near future, we will be doing Christmas time at the Ark, and we will be doing Christmas Town. It's hard to believe that's right around the corner.
I know. How is it already the end of October?
At the Creation Museum, we do Christmas Town, where we actually have a live nativity, a lot of festivities.
Beautiful garden of lights.
It really is. It's beautiful.
Spectacular.
A lot of people just come here just to see that. It really is neat. But we also do Christmas time at the Ark, where things are decorated. They show an incredible show, a laser show, basically on the side of Noah's Ark. At least, you know, I got a chance to see that last year.
That was last year, yeah.
And it was awesome because basically the whole side of this gigantic Noah's Ark became a screen.
Yeah, it was really cool.
And it was really
this
neat.
they're doing a cool
I don't
rainbow.
know what all they're doing this year. You know,
cool rainbow show on the side
of the Gleis rink this year is really cool. So it's like a synthetic ice, basically. It's just plastic, and you can skate on it.
It's like ice when you're warm.
Yeah, ice skate on it, just like you would, you know, normal ice. And so that'll be the biggest Gleis rink in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. Being a Canadian down in the States, I don't have as many opportunities to skate here as I did back home, so I'm super excited. I haven't gotten a chance to try it because for some reason when I was pregnant, my husband wouldn't let me skate on it. So I had to wait. So now that I've had the baby, I'm going to try it.
Yeah, when my wife was pregnant, they wouldn't let her go ziplining either. So, I mean,
I wonder why.
There's a reason.
And don't even ask about skydiving.
Okay,
all right.
Now we're officially out of
there we go. Now we're out of time. All right. Well, please join us again on Monday.
No, on Thursday.
Thursday.
Please,
we've been gone too long. This is the problem. So we'll see you on Thursday.
All right.
God bless you guys.